When I came home that night, my books were in trash bags and my clothes were shoved into cardboard boxes. No note, no warning, just a silent eviction. And the worst part, I wasn't even surprised. I was 22, full-time nursing student, part-time night shift CNA. No car, no money, no mom, and as of that night, no place to live. I got off work just after midnight, 8 hours on my feet, 2 patients dying, one screaming dementia case who thought I was her sister from 1953. My scrubs were damp with sweat, and something I hoped wasn't blood. I walked 3 miles in the cold to the only place I could call home. But when I reached the porch, I knew. No porch light, no dinner plate wrapped in foil. Just my suitcase, unzipped, stuffed, and lopsided, and 3 boxes duct-taped with a bright pink sticky note on top. It said, in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere, "Time to stand on your own 2 feet." I didn't even knock, just stood there, staring at my life and taped cardboard. The wind caught the edge of the note and fluttered it like it was laughing. Inside, lights were off. No one was waiting up. No cousin peeking through the curtains. Not even the dog barked. My aunt's car was in the driveway. She knew I was working a double. She knew I'd be exhausted. She timed it perfectly. It took me 30 minutes to sit down. Another 10 to pull out my cracked phone and check my balance. $43.12. That wouldn't even cover a motel. I had no friends close enough, no spare keys to anywhere, and no backup plan. I thought about sleeping at the bus station. I thought about calling one of my professors. I even thought about going back to the hospital and pretending I'd picked up another shift. But what I did was worse. I scrolled down to a number I hadn't dialed in almost 5 years, Grandma. My thumb hovered. I didn't have a relationship with her, not really. After Mom died, she tried to stay in touch, but Aunt Linda always intercepted. "She's too old," she'd say. "She doesn't understand Kate's needs, and eventually, she doesn't want to be involved." So I stopped trying. But that night, I called. 3 rings, then a groggy voice. "Hello?" I didn't mean to cry. Didn't mean to say her name like I was 5 years old again. Didn't mean to fall apart. But the moment I heard her, it all broke loose. And all I managed was, "Aunt Linda kicked me out." Silence. Then a quiet breath. Then the first sentence that changed my life. "You don't have to live there, sweetheart. That house doesn't belong to her." I froze. "What? You didn't know?" she asked. I told her no. Of course I didn't. The house was Aunt Linda's. She said it was. She said it constantly. My house, my roof, my rules. Grandma sighed. "Baby, that house has been in your name since your mother passed. I signed the deed over to you when you turned 18. I thought it was a mistake. I asked if she was sure. She said she was. And she sounded mad. Mad in that slow, steady way that meant someone had really messed up. "I think it's time we had a talk," she said. "You still at 41st and Maple?" I told her yes. "Sit tight. I'll be there in 20 minutes. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the curb next to my boxes and waited. Cold seeping through my scrubs. Shame crawling up my spine. Everything I had left stuffed into 3 cardboard boxes and a half-zipped suitcase. I didn't know it yet, but my life was about to split in 2. Before the call, and after. And everything I thought I knew about my family was about to collapse. Growing up, I believe my aunt saved me after my mom died, stage 4, ovarian cancer, slow and brutal. Nobody knew what to do with me. My dad had never been in the picture. My mom was an only child. And just like that, at 17, I became a liability to everyone around me. Aunt Linda stepped in. She hugged me at the funeral, said I reminded her of my mother, said, "This is your home now." She cried while she said it. I remember that. That made it easier to believe her. The house was old but warm. Big living room, tiny kitchen, smell of dryer sheets and vanilla candles. Her husband was quiet but decent. My cousin Madison was 16 and obsessed with cheerleading and contour tutorials. And the twins, Dylan and Harper, were toddlers, screaming, climbing, sticky little monsters. I didn't mind. It felt temporary, but stable. I had a bed, a closet, a place at the table. I tried to make myself useful. Helped with dinner, changed diapers, cleaned up after the twins when they destroyed the living room. I took my cousin to math tutoring every Tuesday. I even stopped going to parties. No late-night dates. No drinking. I couldn't afford mistakes. This was my only shot. Aunt Linda used to tell people I was like her second daughter. She said it with pride, like she wanted people to admire her for taking me in. And they did. At church, at school, in front of her friends. "You're doing the Lord's work," they'd say. And she'd smile like it made her tired but holy. But over time, I started noticing the cracks. It was in the way she asked for help with everything. Fold the laundry, pick up the kids, handle dinner, repaint the spare room, run errands, call the cable company, clean the guest bathroom after her bunco group came over. At first I didn't mind. I owed her, right? She was feeding me, sheltering me, giving me a place to sleep while I studied. She said it constantly. No one else stepped up. Remember that, Kate. And I did. I remembered every time she came home from work and sighed loudly when she saw the dishes in the sink. Every time she looked at me when the twins started crying, like it was my job to fix it. Every time she'd make some offhand comment like, "You're lucky you're not out on the street like most girls your age." She started calling me extra weight. She laughed when she said it, but it stuck. Then there were the rules. No overnight shifts if they conflicted with the kids' schedules. No dates. No friends over. No spending money on luxuries like takeout or makeup. She called it discipline. She said it was how young women learn to become responsible. So I adjusted. Again. Nights at the hospital, mornings at school, afternoons at home, doing everything she didn't want to. There was no time for friends, no room for error, and definitely no escape plan. Still, I told myself this was what family looked like. It's not supposed to be easy, right? You help each other. You sacrifice. You put your head down and push through. I told myself that until the night I overheard her talking on the phone. She thought I was asleep. She was in the kitchen, pacing. "She's getting too comfortable," she said. "Still here at 22, like I owe her something." Pause. "She doesn't pay rent. She just plays nurse and pretends it's a real job. I'm not her mother." Another pause. "I should have never let her stay this long. She's not family. Not really. Not family. Not really." Those words didn't hit all at once. They dripped in slowly, like water through a crack in the ceiling, until you look up and realize the whole roof's rotting. That was 3 weeks before she kicked me out. I didn't say anything, didn't confront her. I smiled the next morning and made coffee, pretended I hadn't heard a thing. Because I still didn't have anywhere else to go, I tried to tell myself she was stressed, that she didn't mean it, that maybe she was just venting. But that voice in my head, the one that sounded like my mom's, kept saying, "You're not safe here." And I wasn't. I started keeping my ID and phone charger in my work bag, started sleeping lighter, started leaving extra clothes in my locker at the hospital, just in case. I didn't trust her anymore, but I still trusted the roof over my head. Until that night. Until the porch light was off. Until the sticky note told me I was disposable. And that's what I was to her. A warm body to do chores. A prop for her image, a placeholder. She built an illusion of kindness so solid even I believed it. And she made sure I felt like I owed her everything. But I didn't. Not even close. Because what I learned next, what Grandma told me when she pulled up and made me get in the car, shattered everything I thought I knew. I wasn't the freeloader. I was the owner. Grandma didn't say much in the car. She drove with both hands on the wheel, knuckles pale, eyes forward. The heater rattled. The radio was off. I kept waiting for her to ask questions. What happened? How long it had been bad? What Linda had said? But she didn't. She already knew. That was the worst part. When we pulled into her driveway, she finally looked at me. She didn't tell you, did she? I shook my head. She gave a sharp, tired nod. Of course not. Inside, the house smelled the same way it did when I was a kid. Lemon oil, old books, a little bit of dust. Nothing had changed. Same worn couch, same chipped photo frames, same faded wallpaper with the blue roses. I hadn't stepped foot in her home in almost 5 years, and yet, when I dropped my duffel on the floor and she made tea like it was just another Tuesday, it felt like the only place I'd ever belonged. We sat at the kitchen table. She placed an envelope in front of me, thick paper, legal header. She said, "This is the deed." I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to believe what I already knew was true. She explained everything, slowly, like she'd rehearsed it. I never received any mail in my name. No bills, no notices, no tax documents. When I asked why there was so much correspondence with my name on it, my aunt said it was a mistake or just a mix-up at the bank. One time, I even saw an envelope marked tax office with my name on it. My aunt snatched it out of my hands and said it was empty. I didn't know how property worked. I believed her, because back then, I still thought she was my family. My mom and she had discussed it before the final diagnosis. Mom didn't want me bounced between relatives or stuck in the system. Grandma didn't want the house sitting in probate, so they worked it out legally. The house would be transferred to me the moment I turned 18, but Grandma would hold onto the paperwork until I was ready. And Aunt Linda? She knew. She was there. She witnessed the document, signed her name on the second page. That was the first real slap in the face. Not just the betrayal, but the premeditation. It wasn't just lies, it was strategy. I stayed up that night, reading the deed over and over. My name, printed in black ink, dated 3 days after my 18th birthday. Notarized. Final. She'd looked me in the face 100 times and said, "This is my house." And I'd believed her, cleaned for her, cooked for her, babysat her children, and thanked her for letting me stay. But now, the signs were everywhere. I remembered that week when I turned 18, how she suddenly needed help organizing some documents in the office. She rushed me through the mail, told me to shred a bunch of stuff, claimed it was junk. She hovered the whole time, kept saying, "Don't worry about those, they're old." Now I knew exactly what she didn't want me to find. Then there were the little moments that never sat right. The time I asked for a key to the front door and she said no, said it was a safety thing. The way she'd never let me go through the mail or answer the door if it looked like someone official. She told me once, "Don't talk to the mailman. He's nosy." I laughed at the time. Now I understood, even the bills, electric, water, cable, they were always in her husband's name, not hers. And when I asked why, she'd snap, "Why do you care? You're not paying for it." It wasn't about bills. It was about hiding the paper trail. There was one memory that burned more than the rest. I was 19, working double shifts, barely making it through anatomy lab without falling asleep. I asked if I could crash in the guest room for the weekend because Madison was sick, and I didn't want to get whatever she had. Aunt Linda stood in the hallway with her arms crossed and said, "This isn't a hotel, Kate. You don't get to make special requests." But the guest room had been mine, the one my mom and I used to stay in on holidays. My old diary was still in the drawer. When I moved back in, I started to realize how much had been rewritten. How many tiny boundaries I never questioned. How much I'd swallowed just to keep the peace. She used my grief as a cover, used my mother's death as leverage, told herself, maybe, that I owed her, that she was doing me a favor, and I wanted so badly to believe her, because the truth was harder. The truth was that I'd been conned, by blood, by someone who smiled at me every morning and said, "We're family," and maybe I could have forgiven the lies. Maybe I could have chalked it up to stress, or misunderstanding, or bad communication. But what made it unforgivable was what happened the next morning. I woke up to a blocked number calling my phone, let it go to voicemail, then listened to it with shaking hands. It was Aunt Linda. Her voice was sharp, clipped. She didn't say hello. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said, running off to your grandmother like a little brat. "After everything I did for you, you better not come back here, Kate. You're not welcome. Not anymore." Click. No apology. No explanation. Just a threat, wrapped in guilt. I saved the voicemail. Then I played it for Grandma. She didn't flinch, didn't say much, just stood up, walked to the phone, and made a call. To her lawyer. After that voicemail, everything snapped into focus. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I'd just been slowly erased. And now I could see it clearly for the first time. But before she threw me out, before the boxes on the porch and the sticky note goodbye, there was a stretch of weeks where I lived in the same house as Aunt Linda and became a ghost. I moved through her kitchen like a stranger, breathed quieter, stepped lighter, listened harder. She didn't know I knew, not yet, and I didn't let her see it. I kept my face soft, my tone neutral. I said thank you after dinner. I picked up the twins from daycare. I helped Madison study for her finals. I folded towels and wiped counters and nodded when she dropped her usual lines. "You're lucky I don't charge rent. Not everyone would have taken you in, Kate. You better hope your grades pay off, 'cause I'm not your safety net." I started writing them down, not because I needed proof, no one else would care, but because I needed to remember that I wasn't imagining it. That stretch of weeks was the slowest kind of bleeding. No one screamed, no fights, just the quiet decaying of trust and the weight of knowing too much. I started noticing how calculated she was, how good she was at performing. At church, she'd introduce me as our Kate, then whisper to women in the pews behind us about how exhausted she was keeping that poor girl afloat. At the grocery store, she'd buy name-brand snacks for the kids and hand me coupons, telling the cashier I was such a frugal little thing. She bragged about my GPA, then rolled her eyes when I asked to study instead of babysitting. Every compliment came with a hook, every smile with a leash. She was rehearsing a role, Saint Linda, the martyr, and I was just a prop. Something she used to look good, to sound good, to feel better about the choices she made. I started watching her, really watching. She had 2 phones. One she kept in her purse. The other stayed on the kitchen counter. I never saw her use the second one, until one day I heard her talking in the laundry room. Door cracked. Voice hushed. She was saying things like, "I just need a little more time," and "she still doesn't know." My name never came up, but my stomach twisted anyway. I started going through the trash. Not proud of it, but I needed to know what she was hiding. I found a torn envelope addressed to me, postmarked 6 months earlier, from a bank. I pieced it together with tape. Inside was a yearly statement for property taxes, paid in full in my name. She'd been intercepting my mail. I stopped sleeping through the night, started locking my bedroom door with a chair under the knob. She mocked me for it, said, "What? You think we're going to rob you in your sleep?" I didn't answer. I just smiled. That's when she started turning the screws. The chores got heavier. The demands came faster. Suddenly, it was my job to clean the garage, repaint the basement, sort through boxes in the attic. I tried to say no once. She got quiet, too quiet. Then she said, "After everything we've done for you, you can't even sweep the basement?" So I did it. And when I came back upstairs, I found that she'd gone through my backpack. My textbooks were out of order. My phone charger was unplugged, and my planner, the one with the lawyer's contact scribbled in pencil, was missing. It reappeared 2 days later, in the laundry basket. She was sending a message. She knew I was hiding something, and now I knew she was watching me just as closely. That was when I stopped trusting even the walls. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow, set to silent, kept a change of clothes in a tote bag in the trunk of her minivan. I left copies of my important papers at the hospital, asked a coworker I trusted to keep them just in case. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched. Because it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about timing. I knew she wouldn't let me stay forever. I could feel it. The final push was coming. Every conversation felt rehearsed. Every gesture measured. She'd started referring to the house as our home, less and less, and more like my house. One night, she told the twins not to call me Sissy anymore. Said I was just a guest now. The kids cried. She didn't flinch. That was the night I knew. The knife was coming. She just hadn't decided where to stick it yet. And then it happened. That final night. I came home after the shift from hell. 2 deaths, a patient fall, a nurse quit mid-shift, and found the porch light off. Boxes on the steps, sticky note fluttering. Just like that, the waiting was over. No confrontation, no closure, just exile. But what she didn't know, what I never told her, was that I'd already made the call. I already knew what she'd hidden. Already knew the house wasn't hers. Already had a name, a number, and a meeting booked for Friday. She thought she was ending the story, but she was just giving me the fuel to finish it. The lawyer's office wasn't what I expected. No mahogany walls, no towering shelves of leather-bound books, just beige carpet, fake plants, and a woman behind a desk who smiled without looking up from her computer. I sat on a stiff gray couch that smelled faintly like cleaning spray and waited for someone to say my name. I hadn't eaten that morning. I kept checking my phone, as if Aunt Linda might have magically called to confess everything, to admit what she'd done, to tell me I could come home. But I didn't want to come home. Not to her house, because it wasn't hers. Not anymore. Mr. Darnell finally stepped into the waiting room. He looked exactly like a man who reads contracts for fun. White shirt, navy tie, thick glasses, a voice like an NPR host. followed him to his office with my backpack gripped like a life vest. I sat across from him and laid out the documents Grandma gave me, the deed. The notarized letter from the estate attorney, the tax records with my name on them, everything Linda pretended didn't exist. He didn't speak much, just nodded and read each page like he'd seen it all before. Maybe he had. Maybe people like Aunt Linda weren't as rare as I wanted to believe. When he finally looked up, he didn't sugarcoat anything. "You're the legal owner of that property," he said. I didn't move, didn't even nod. I just stared at him like he was reciting fiction. He repeated it, slowly this time. Said the house had been transferred into my name 4 years ago. Said the paperwork was complete, valid, and protected. Said if I wanted to take legal action, I had every right. I asked if she could fight it. He shook his head. "She's not on the title. She doesn't have legal standing. The only reason she's in that house is because you haven't enforced your ownership." Those words made me feel dizzy. For years, I'd scrubbed her floors, fed her kids, given up sleep, school, peace, and I'd done it thinking I owed her, that she was doing me a favor, that I was a guest in her kingdom. But I wasn't. I was the owner, and she was the squatter. He asked what I wanted to do. "Eviction?" he said plainly. It hit harder than I thought it would. The words sounded violent, cold, like something I'd seen on the news. And now it had my name on it, my face, my story. Part of me still wanted to say no, still wanted to keep the peace, avoid drama, keep this family-shaped mess from boiling over. But another part, the part that had slept with a chair under the doorknob, the part that had eaten scraps while her fridge was full, the part that walked 3 miles home just to find my life packed into boxes, was done being quiet. I said yes. Mr. Darnell slid a new form across the desk. If we start today, she'll receive the official notice in 7 business days. I signed it. My hand didn't even shake. Not until after, when I stepped back outside, the sky looked too bright, like the world didn't realize something had shifted, like the sidewalk under my feet didn't know I'd just declared war on the woman who raised me. It felt surreal, legal, permanent, but the hardest part wasn't getting the papers filed. The hardest part was knowing what came next, because the woman who kicked me out without a second thought was about to be thrown out of a house that was never hers, and I was the one holding the key. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. I didn't deliver it. I didn't call her. I didn't give a warning. It came in a plain envelope, stamped, certified, official, served through the proper channels. Just like Mr. Darnell said. By that point, I was living at Grandma's full time, still going to classes, still picking up night shifts when I could, but everything felt slower, heavier, like my life had been a lie that was finally unraveling. I knew the moment she got it, because 3 hours later, my phone started vibrating, 1 call, then another, then 5 more, all from no caller ID. I didn't answer, not once. Then came the voicemail. Her voice was calm, sweet, almost, like honey covering glass. She said she got some strange mail, said it must be a mistake, said she assumed I was being manipulated by someone, and then, like a knife tucked into a smile, "Call me. Let's fix this before you do something you'll regret." I didn't call her back. She wasn't used to silence. She was used to being in control. Later that night, she called Grandma. Didn't ask how she was. Didn't bother with small talk. She laughed, said, "Kate's trying to kick me out of my own house. Can you believe that?" But then, according to Grandma, her tone changed right after she mentioned the last page, because that was the part she hadn't expected. The legal demand for immediate vacancy. The itemized list of damages and back use. The notice of property ownership transfer dated 4 years prior. That's when she stopped laughing. 2 days later, I saw her at the grocery store. I was coming out with 2 bags of ramen and a 6-pack of Gatorade, and there she was, by the pharmacy aisle, holding a bottle of children's vitamins. She spotted me, froze, then smiled, a practiced plastic smile, the same one she used on church ladies and school administrators. I nodded and walked past her. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. But as I passed, she spoke. Quiet, but sharp enough to cut. You think you've won, Kate? You have no idea what you're doing. She didn't wait for a response. Just turned down the next aisle. She was unraveling, not publicly, not yet, but I could see it. The confidence she wore, like armor, had started to crack. She started calling other family members, feeding them her version. She's trying to destroy our family. She's been brainwashed. She's mentally unstable. She's stealing my kids home. I expected the shame. What I didn't expect, what I'll never forget, was how quiet most people stayed. No one called me. No one checked in. No one asked for my side. For some, it was too messy, too ugly. For others, it was easier to believe her than to confront the truth, that they'd all stood by while I was used. But I wasn't looking for their support. I had facts. I had paperwork. I had the law. And she had 30 days to vacate. That was the court's order. She tried to stall. Filed a response full of baseless claims. Said I forged the signature. Said my mother never would have left me a house. Said I manipulated an elderly woman into lying for me. But the judge wasn't impressed. He read the documents, verified the records, dismissed her objections like they were nothing. He gave her 2 weeks, 14 days, no appeals, no extensions. By the end of that hearing, her face was pale. No makeup, no smile. Just a woman finally realizing she couldn't bully her way out of this. The fall came fast. She packed in silence, didn't say goodbye. Left behind a garage full of junk and a living room full of broken furniture. The house was mine again, but it didn't feel like a victory, because no matter how right I was, how justified, how supported by law, I'd still been thrown out like trash by someone who claimed to love me. I still woke up in the middle of the night, heart racing, half expecting to find my things on the curb again, and I still heard her voice in my head every time I crossed the threshold. You're lucky I let you stay. She didn't let me stay. She stole what was already mine. And when I finally took it back, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like walking away from a fire barefoot, still smelling like smoke. The day Aunt Linda left, the house went silent in a way I'd never heard before. No TV humming in the background, no squealing toddlers running barefoot through the hall, no heavy footsteps upstairs, no passive-aggressive sighs drifting from the kitchen, just the sound of the air conditioner kicking on and the creak of old floorboards shifting beneath my feet. I stood in the doorway with the keys in my hand and stared at the house that had defined my life, first as a promise, then as a prison. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel anything at all. She left the walls covered in holes, furniture broken or missing. The couch was gone. My old mattress had been slashed straight down the middle. One cabinet door hung off the hinge. Crayons were melted into the carpet upstairs. Something had died in the fridge. I didn't ask what. She'd taken the good things. Left the mess. It wasn't sabotage, it was strategy, because she knew if I walked into filth, it wouldn't feel like a win. It'd feel like punishment. And it worked. I set my backpack down in the living room and sat on the floor because there was nothing else to sit on. My legs ached, my head throbbed, my hands shook. This house, the one that had always belonged to me on paper, had never belonged to me in feeling. It had always felt like hers. Even now, I walked from room to room like I was trespassing. Ran my fingers along the kitchen counter where she used to line up pill bottles and unpaid bills. Opened the closet door where she kept the Christmas decorations and her anger. Stood in the guest room, my old room, and stared at the bare mattress frame and the broken lamp in the corner. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud, suffocating. I stayed that night, even though I didn't want to. Slept on the floor with a blanket I brought from Grandma's. No lights, no music, just me and the bones of a house that never protected me. I thought reclaiming it would heal something, that it would snap everything back into place. But the truth is, you can't reclaim what never truly belonged to you. Over the next few days, I cleaned, room by room, bag by bag. I wore gloves and kept the windows open, scrubbed walls until the water ran brown, vacuumed until the motor overheated, donated whatever I could stomach keeping, and tossed the rest onto the curb. It took 2 weeks before the smell of her perfume left the hallway. During those days, no one came by. No cousins, no neighbors, no family friends. Even the church group that used to bring casseroles during flu season pretended not to see me when I passed them in town. The only person who showed up was Grandma. She brought over groceries, bleach, a mop. She didn't ask how I was. She just started helping. One night, she stood in the doorway and looked around the living room, where the couch had once been. She never deserved this house, she said. But you do. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down, a part of me still believed maybe I didn't. That belief doesn't disappear just because you win. Shame has long roots, and hers were wrapped around me for years. There were nights when I'd wake up in a panic, sure that I'd hear her keys in the lock. Nights when I sat in the kitchen and stared at the front door, waiting for it to open, as if she might come back, yelling, saying it was all a joke, and telling me to pack up and leave, even when I was alone. I flinched at every knock. I kept the lights on. I double-locked the doors. I slept light and cold, the worst part. I missed the noise. I missed the chaos, the mess, even the pain. Because when your whole life is survival, peace can feel like a threat. I had to relearn everything. How to exist without fear. How to take up space. How to believe that I deserved more than bare floors and empty rooms. The house was mine, but I wasn't home yet. I didn't tell anyone what the silence was doing to me. People assume that once you get justice, things get easier. That once the house was legally mine and Linda was gone, my life started fresh, better, cleaner. But it didn't, not really. The court win didn't erase the years of pretending. Didn't take away the nights I spent wondering what I'd done wrong. Didn't remove the echo of her voice from the walls. That's the thing no one tells you about being used by someone you trusted. It rewrites the way you talk to yourself, even after they're gone. I kept cleaning, not just the house, but everything. Drawers, closets, attic. I found scraps of my old life buried under piles of hers. A broken necklace from my mom. My high school yearbook, with a note she'd scribbled on the back. So proud of you, baby. A birthday card I never received. Still sealed. That one made me sit down and cry on the laundry room floor for a long time. Because I realized she hadn't always been cruel. Or maybe she had. and I just hadn't seen it yet. Some nights, I'd walk from room to room like I was looking for someone, like I expected to find a younger version of myself hiding in the closet or under the bed, hoping for someone to come and say, "You're safe now." But no one came, so I wrote, at first in my head, then on paper, one sentence, then another, then 4 pages in a notebook I found buried in a box labeled garage. It wasn't for anyone. There was no audience, no plan to share it. I wrote because if I didn't, I'd lose my grip on what was real, because the gaslighting didn't stop when she left. It just became internal. I still caught myself thinking things like, she didn't mean to hurt me. She was doing her best. Maybe I overreacted. And then I'd flip through the pages I'd written. Every quote, every insult, every rule, everything she took. And remind myself, I didn't imagine it, I survived it. That notebook became the one thing I didn't hide. It sat on the kitchen table, wide open, as if saying, this happened, and no one's going to bury it again. The words weren't poetic. They weren't pretty, but they were honest. They said things like, she told me no one else would love me because I was broken. She changed the locks when I stayed out late, even though it was my shift. She called me a leech in front of her friends. She told the kids not to hug me anymore. Those were facts. Ugly ones, but still facts. Writing became the one space where I wasn't being watched, judged, or guilt-tripped. It didn't ask me to forgive her, didn't tell me to move on. It just let me bleed without apologizing for the mess. Eventually, I bought a small desk from a thrift store, set it up in the corner of the living room, started filling more pages, not just memories, but things I wanted to say, things I never got to say, like, you didn't break me, you just tried. You raised me to believe I was disposable, but I'm not. You don't get to own my story. I didn't tell Grandma I was writing, but one day, she walked in while I was scribbling something. She didn't ask questions, just placed a cup of tea beside me and squeezed my shoulder. I think that was her way of saying, keep going. So I did. Page after page. Until one morning I looked up and realized I didn't feel like a guest in my own house anymore. The floors were clean, the air was still. The ghosts had stopped screaming. I was still angry, still healing, but I was standing. And that, for me, was the beginning of freedom, not the eviction, not the court date, not the deed, but the moment I wrote the truth down, without asking anyone for permission. It started with a letter, not certified, not typed, not from a lawyer, just a cheap greeting card with gold foil around the edges and a watercolor flower on the front. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Sharp, tilted, slightly too perfect. Inside it said, I know things got out of hand. I never meant for you to feel unloved. I hope one day you'll forgive me. Love, Aunt Linda. That was it. No mention of eviction. No mention of lies or manipulation or locking me out of a house that wasn't hers. Just a single sentence wrapped in vague regret and silence where truth should have been. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even think about writing back. I folded the card and placed it in the back of the drawer with bills and appliance manuals. It didn't deserve a spotlight. Weeks passed. Then she emailed me, subject line, just checking in. A few paragraphs. Casual. She said she was in a better place now, that she'd started therapy, that the kids missed me, that Madison had a boyfriend and the twins had started soccer, that maybe one day we could talk. She never said she was sorry, not directly, She never used the word. She just acted like it had been a misunderstanding, like I was the one who disappeared, like nothing had actually happened. And that's when I realized something that surprised even me. I didn't hate her anymore, not because I forgave her, not because I healed, but because whatever part of me she used to hold, whatever part still longed for her approval, was gone. She had no power left. I didn't feel bitterness or sadness or rage. I felt nothing, just distance. I used to think closure came with big moments, with shouting, with breakdowns, with face-to-face confrontations and perfect speeches that landed like a punch. But for me, closure came in silence. It came in the emails I never answered, the voicemails I deleted without listening, the birthday cards I didn't open, the peace I chose not to shatter by giving her access again. She didn't get to rewrite the story. Not this time. I still remembered every time she said I was a burden. Every moment she made me feel like less than human. Every time she reminded me that I should be grateful just to exist near her. Now, she wanted something soft, forgiveness, a path back into my life. But I didn't have anything left to give her, not even anger. One afternoon, I saw her in a parking lot. She was coming out of a pharmacy, alone, hair in a bun, sweatpants, no makeup. She saw me too, and for a second I thought she might come over. Start a conversation, try to cry, or perform some kind of regret. But she didn't. She just gave a small wave, like a neighbor you don't know well. I nodded. That was it. She got in her car and drove off, and I felt free, not triumphant, not healed, just done. People love redemption arcs. They want stories to end with hugs and forgiveness and family reunions over Sunday dinner. But not all stories get that, and not all stories need it. Some stories just end with you surviving what tried to destroy you and refusing to open the door again. I've thought about what I'd say to her if I ever chose to respond. But every time I sit down to write something, nothing comes. Because there's nothing she can say that would make the years disappear. Nothing she can offer that would make the betrayal smaller. Nothing that could earn back that what she threw away without blinking. She chose her comfort over my safety, her control over my dignity, and now she has to live with that. I don't need her apology, and I don't owe her my forgiveness. She taught me how to survive in silence, how to shrink, how to disappear inside someone else's expectations. But what she never expected, what she couldn't predict, was that I'd learn how to come back stronger, alone. Unapologetic. I used to imagine the final chapter of the story would feel like revenge. I thought it would be loud, messy, dramatic, some cinematic moment where I slam a door, shout something powerful, and walk away while she watches in shock. But real life doesn't end like that. It ends quietly. With me standing in the middle of a room I once scrubbed on my knees. Sunlight through windows she kept covered. A couch I bought secondhand. A plant I haven't killed yet. Peace without applause. I used to be the extra, the burden, the girl who should be grateful. The one who kept her head down, picked up after everyone, and said thank you for being tolerated. Now I wake up to silence that doesn't threaten, to a kitchen that smells like coffee and burnt toast, to a home where no one tells me how much I cost them, and that is everything. I didn't rebuild quickly. There wasn't a magic switch. Some mornings I still woke up tense, waiting for the sound of her voice, waiting for a knock, waiting for something to go wrong. Even after the house was legally mine, I still felt like I needed permission to exist in it. I cleaned, slowly, room by room, scrubbed her fingerprints off the light switches, painted over the hallway where she'd made a height chart for her kids and told me not to touch it, replaced curtains, door handles, floorboards. I erased what I could, lived with what I couldn't, not out of spite, out of necessity. I had to make the space mine, not just on paper, but in memory. And over time, it worked. One night, I realized I hadn't thought of her in days. Not her words, not her rules, not even her face. She used to take up every corner of my mind. Now she's just a shadow that passes without stopping. That's what healing really looked like for me. Not forgiveness, not some fake family reunion, but absence. One day, I got a message from Madison, my cousin. We hadn't spoken since the eviction. She said she'd been thinking about me, that she was sorry for not doing more, that maybe one day, if I was open to it, we could talk. I read it 5 times. Then I put the phone down and cried, not because I wanted her back, but because for the first time, someone in that house saw me. I haven't replied yet, but maybe I will, when I'm ready. Grandma still visits every Sunday. She brings fresh fruit, tells me stories I've already heard, and sits with me in the kitchen like we never lost 5 years to silence. We don't talk about Linda anymore, not because we're avoiding it, because there's nothing left to say. Sometimes people ask if I ever forgave her, and the truth is, I didn't, but I stopped needing to. Forgiveness is a door you only need to open when you plan to let someone back in. I locked mine, and I threw the key into the part of me that used to believe I had to earn love by suffering for it. She doesn't call anymore, doesn't send cards. The last one I got was a year ago. Same script, no specifics. Just vague guilt wrapped in a cheap greeting card. I didn't open it, I put it straight in the trash. Didn't even feel a thing. Some people call that bitterness. I call it survival. Because the truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm busy. I'm building. I'm living. I've turned this house into something she never could. A sanctuary. There are still cracks in the walls. The plumbing still groans. The windows still rattle when it storms. But this place doesn't punish me for being in it. It shelters me. It listens when I cry. Holds me when I fall asleep on the couch. Wakes with me when I make coffee at 6 a.m. before class. This house isn't just mine. It's me. Every room is proof that I stayed when I could have disappeared. That I rebuilt when I had every reason to burn it all down. That I chose to begin again, even when the ground was still shaking. She took my childhood, but I built something she can't touch. And I'm still building. What would you do in my place? Please write your thoughts in the comments. I will be happy to read them.